You know, the cruelest truths in life, they usually only show themselves when you're already in the twilight of your years. All those beautiful things we so fiercely believed in when we were young. All that completeness we desperately chased in our middle age. When you hit old age, they turn into the deepest kind of pain. Why is that? Why do we have to wait until our hair is white and our days are numbered before we can truly see through those things we once thought were so precious?
I remember hearing this story about an old man, rich beyond measure, with a house full of children and grandchildren. He was in the Jetavana monastery, nearing the very end of his life, and he just broke down, sobbing in front of the Buddha. He spoke words that shook everyone to their core. His realization, it laid bare the deepest human delusion, and it revealed a truth that, frankly, terrifies us all. What is this truth? And why is it that only at the very end of our lives do we dare to face it?
It was a bleak autumn night, the moonlight like frost, painting the stone paths of Jetavana. The monastery was utterly silent. The Buddha had just finished his evening meditation and was preparing to rest in his dwelling. Suddenly, a muffled sob echoed from the distance. Following the sound, he saw a hunched figure stumbling towards him. In the moonlight, it was an old man, well over 70, with hair like snow, a gaunt face, and swollen red eyes. He'd clearly been weeping for a long, long time.
Blessed One, please save your disciple.
The old man hadn't even reached him before he collapsed to his knees, his voice choked with sobs. The Buddha recognized him. It was Purana, the famous wealthy merchant of the region. This man had started from nothing in his youth. His business flourished in middle age, and now he was a renowned magnate, his wealth immeasurable. Even more enviable, he had 3 sons and 2 daughters, all successful in their own right, and more than a dozen grandchildren. You could say he had it all: children, grandchildren, a complete life. But at that moment, Purana was a far cry from a successful man. He was trembling, his eyes filled with an unspeakable despair and pain. "Purana, what's wrong?" the Buddha asked kindly. "Blessed One, your disciple cannot go on living."
My whole life, he choked out, I struggled to make money, to support my family. I thought that if I just left enough wealth for my children and grandchildren, gave them the best life, they would be filial. They would stay with me. They would keep me company. But, he couldn't finish. He simply collapsed onto the ground like a withered leaf blown away by the wind. The Buddha didn't rush to comfort him. He waited patiently. Years of teaching the Dharma had taught him that some pain has to be fully expressed before true liberation can be found. After a long while, Purana slowly lifted his head. His tears had long since dried, leaving only a profound weariness. "Blessed One," he began, "I am 73 years old now. My body grows weaker every day. Just last month I fell ill, a high fever. It wouldn't break. I truly thought I was dying." He paused, his voice trembling again. "I sent my servant to call my sons. I wanted to see them one last time."
But my eldest son said he was too busy with business and couldn't leave. My second son said his child was sick and he couldn't get away. My third son, he did come back, but as soon as he entered the room, he asked about the distribution of my property. He even said I should write my will while my mind was still clear. As for my daughters, one was out of town and didn't even get the message. The other, though she lived nearby, just came for a quick look, left a few words of comfort, and then left, saying she had to rush back to cook for her grandson. Purana's voice grew fainter and fainter. Blessed One, I lay there on my bed, looking at the empty room, and suddenly a truth dawned on me. All these years, I had been deceiving myself. A flicker of compassion crossed the Buddha's eyes, but he remained silent, listening. The family affection I thought I had, it was just a transaction. I gave them money, and they were good to me. I was useful to them, so they gathered around me. But once I got old, once I got sick, once I couldn't give them anything anymore, they just... Purana couldn't finish. He was trembling all over.
Just then, an autumn breeze swept through the garden, scattering the leaves of the wutong trees. The Buddha looked at the falling leaves and then quietly asked, "Purana, have you ever considered what your pain truly stems from?" Purana was stunned. It seemed he had never seriously thought about that question. "Blessed One," he stammered, "isn't my pain from my children's unfilial behavior?" "Is that truly so?" the Buddha countered. Purana fell silent. Under the Buddha's compassionate and wise gaze, he began to deeply examine his own heart. After a long time, he seemed to understand something, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes.
Blessed One, I understand. My pain isn't because my children are unfilial. It's because I had expectations of them. I expected them to cling to me forever, like when they were little. I expected them to see me as the most important person in their lives. I expected them to stay with me until my last breath. The Buddha nodded. Then, were these expectations reasonable? Purana's face turned ashen. No, they weren't. They have their own lives, their own families, their own responsibilities. Who am I to demand that they put me first? And why did you have such expectations? The Buddha continued. This question struck Purana like lightning. He suddenly realized that the reason he had such expectations was because he had mistaken his beautiful fantasies about family for reality. He thought that blood relations equated to eternal love. He thought that the grace of raising children would bring lifelong companionship. He thought that the warmth of family could ward off the loneliness of old age, sickness, and death. Blessed One, Purana's voice trembled. I've been living in a dream I wove myself. I mistook temporary dependence for an eternal promise. I mistook conditional care for unconditional devotion. I mistook the natural process of growth for betrayal. I was truly deceiving myself.
After saying these words, Purana seemed to deflate, slumping to the ground. But strangely, his eyes became much clearer, as if a huge knot in his heart had finally been untied. The Buddha looked at him and said kindly, "Purana, to recognize this is the beginning of wisdom." "But Blessed One," Purana's voice held a deep bewilderment, "if family affection is an illusion, then what meaning does my life have? I gave everything for my children and grandchildren. If all that was meaningless, then why am I even alive? The Buddha didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up and walked to an old well in the garden. The moonlight reflected in the well water, shimmering like broken silver.
Purana, come here and look into this well, the Buddha said. Purana struggled to his feet and walked over to the Buddha. What do you see? The Buddha asked. I see the reflection of the moon, Purana replied. Can you grasp this moon? Purana shook his head. No, it's just a reflection, not the real moon. Then where is the real moon? Purana looked up at the sky. In the sky.
The Buddha nodded. Yes, the family affection and warmth you pursued your whole life are like this moon in the well. You thought you grasped it, but you only grasped a fleeting image. The true completeness and peace, like the moon in the sky, have always been within your own heart. You just never looked up to see it. Purana looked at the Buddha, awestruck. An unprecedented emotion swelled within him. He suddenly understood. All his suffering over the years was because he had been looking in the wrong direction. He had always sought outwardly, but never inwardly. He had always relied on others, but never on himself. He had always pursued illusions, but ignored what was real.
Blessed One, I now understand where I went wrong, but I have one more question. Purana's voice was filled with a thirst for knowledge. Speak, the Buddha said. I want to know why I had to reach this age to see through all this. Why couldn't I see it when I was young? Why couldn't I see it in middle age? Why did it have to wait until my life was almost over? This question plunged everyone present into deep thought. Yes, why do people only see things clearly when they're old? Why did youthful passion and midlife attachment blind us to the truth?
The Buddha looked deeply at Purana, then slowly began to speak. The Buddha's gaze seemed to pierce through time and space, seeing the deepest secrets of Purana's heart. In that moment, Purana felt his soul utterly exposed to the light of the Blessed One's wisdom. It was a feeling of having nowhere to hide, yet longing to be purified. Purana, your question touches upon the deepest mystery of life. The Buddha's voice carried an unfathomable wisdom. This answer concerns not only your personal liberation, but also all beings' understanding of the nature of life.
The wind in the garden suddenly stilled. Even the chirping of insects quieted. The moonlight grew even brighter, as if waiting for the truth that was about to be revealed. Purana's heart pounded like a drum. He knew that what the Blessed One was about to teach would be the most important Dharma teaching he would ever hear. The bhikkhus present also held their breath. They felt a solemn atmosphere. This was no ordinary teaching. It was a revelation of the fundamental laws of life, an analysis of the deepest human delusions.
The Buddha slowly began to speak, his voice as cool as nectar. Purana, the reason you only saw clearly in your old age is not because wisdom suddenly descended. It's because only when the shadow of death becomes increasingly clear are people forced to confront the truth of life. Purana trembled. These words were like a splash of cool water on a fevered brow. The Nirvana Sutra says, All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. Those who are born inevitably suffer. The five aggregates are empty of self. Nirvana is tranquil and joyful.
In your youth, you were blinded by vibrant vitality, thinking time was infinite, so you dared to place your hopes on an illusory future. In middle age, you were consumed by responsibilities and achievements, busy dealing with reality with no time to ponder fundamental questions. Only in old age, when impermanence becomes most evident, when physical strength declines and days are numbered, do you have to consider, what have I been pursuing all my life? The Buddha walked in front of Purana, his compassionate eyes seeming to see through everything. What you can see clearly now.
It was actually there when you were young. You just didn't want to see it, and you didn't dare to see it, because once you saw it, you would have to admit that your past way of life was wrong, that the goals you pursued were illusory. How cruel would that be for a person in their prime? Purana nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. The Blessed One is right. If I had seen these things clearly when I was young, I might not have been able to go on living.
Back then, I needed a goal. I needed a reason to sustain myself through the long journey of life. Even if that goal was illusory, even if that reason was self-deception, I needed them. This is the sorrow of human nature, and also its compassion, the Buddha sighed. The Lotus Sutra says, the Buddhas appear in the world for one great cause, to open the Buddha knowledge and vision to sentient beings, enabling them to attain purity. But this process of opening can only happen when the hearts of sentient beings are ready. Just as fruit must ripen before it naturally falls, awakening must also wait until the conditions are ripe.
Purana seemed to understand. Blessed One, are you saying that my current suffering is actually a prelude to awakening?
Precisely so, the Buddha smiled. The Vimalakirti Sutra says, afflictions are bodhi, samsara is nirvana. Your present suffering is precisely because you are beginning to see the truth. This suffering is necessary. It is the inevitable path from delusion to awakening. Just then, an elderly bhikkhu stepped forward and asked, Blessed One, Purana's awakening has deeply inspired me, but I want to know, must everyone wait until old age to awaken? The Buddha shook his head. Awakening has nothing to do with age, but with the willingness to face the truth. Some people, even in old age, remain deluded, even on their deathbeds, still fantasizing about their children's filial piety. Some people, at a young age, can thoroughly comprehend the nature of life. The key lies in having the courage to let go of attachments and face impermanence. However, the Buddha's tone shifted. It cannot be denied that old age is indeed the best time for awakening, because at this time all illusions begin to peel away. Wealth cannot stop aging. Status cannot delay death. Even the most intimate blood relations reveal their fragile nature. Purana nodded deeply. Blessed One, I now understand. My past suffering was not because my children were unfilial, but because I had unrealistic expectations of them. I treated them as the source of my happiness,
as the meaning of my existence. But such dependence is bound to bring suffering.
Excellent, excellent, the Buddha praised. The Diamond Sutra says, develop a mind that does not abide in anything. You now understand that true happiness cannot depend on any external conditions. You are not happy because you have something, nor are you suffering because you have lost something. Purana pondered this. Then, Blessed One, how should I treat my children and grandchildren now? If family affection is illusory, should I cut off all ties?
The Buddha shook his head. Not cutting off, but not clinging. To have affection and righteousness is compassion, but one must not generate attachment because of affection and righteousness. Just as a lotus grows out of mud, yet remains unstained, we can walk in the mundane world, but our hearts must remain pure. Love without clinging, this is the Bodhisattva path. The Buddha continued his teaching. You can continue to care for your children and grandchildren, but do not expect to gain anything from them. Giving is compassion, taking is greed. When you no longer expect return, your love will be pure and your heart will be free. A light Purana had never seen before shone in his eyes. Blessed One, I understand. My past mistake was building my happiness on others. I thought my children's success was my success. Their companionship was my happiness. But such happiness is inherently unstable because I handed my destiny over to others. The Surangama Sutra says, when the deluded mind ceases, that cessation itself is Bodhi. The Buddha nodded. Yet this mind that clings outwardly stopped, wisdom naturally manifested. True peace is not sought externally, but realized internally. Just then, a few more leaves fell from the Wutong tree in the garden. The Buddha pointed to the falling leaves and said, Purana, look at these fall leaves. They have left the big tree. Is that betrayal? Purana shook his head. No, this is a natural law. Children leaving their parents is also a natural law, the Buddha said. When the leaves were on the tree, they were one. The intimacy at that time was real. But leaves have their own life cycle. When the time comes, they must leave the big tree to fulfill their own mission. This is not betrayal. It is growth. Purana suddenly understood. Blessed One, I understand. I always mistook my children's dependence on me when they were young for their eternal promise to me. But dependence has a time limit, and growth is irreversible. I cannot demand that a grown son cling to me forever, as he did when he was 3 years old. Exactly so, the Buddha looked at him compassionately. The Avatamsaka Sutra says, the mind is like a skillful painter, able to paint all the worlds. You past used your own heart to draw a beautiful family picture, but that was just a painting in your heart, not reality. The reality is that everyone has their own life path. Everyone has their own responsibility and mission. Purana closed his eyes, seemingly absorbing the meaning. After a while, he opened his eyes. The sorrow that had been there before was replaced by a deep serenity. Blessed One, I now understand
that so-called loneliness is also an illusion. When I stopped seeking solace externally, I felt an unprecedented fullness.
The Perfect Enlightenment Sutra says, all sentient beings possess the wisdom and virtuous characteristics of the Tathagata, but due to their illusory thoughts and attachments, they cannot realize them. The Buddha praised him, Purana, by letting go of your attachment to your children and grandchildren, you are restoring your inherent wisdom. This wisdom is not learned from outside. It is something you already possess.
Just then, a young lay follower suddenly asked, "Blessed One, if we should not seek solace in family affection, then what meaning does life have?" The Buddha looked at him compassionately. Meaning is not in what you gain, but in what you become. When you no longer live to gain, you begin to live to give. When you no longer live for external recognition, you begin to live for internal perfection. It is then that you truly begin to live. Purana sighed deeply. Blessed One, I now understand why people only see clearly when they are old. Because only when all illusions are shattered does the truth appear. In our youth, we have too many desires and expectations. These are the mists. In middle age, we have too many responsibilities and concerns. These are the shackles. Only in old age, when the mists dissipate and the shackles loosen, can we see the true moon within our hearts. Not only that, the Buddha continued, old age has another special advantage. It is close to death. Death is the best teacher. It strips away all illusions, allowing you to see your truest self. When you know your time is short, you will no longer waste energy pursuing those illusory things. Purana nodded. Yes, Blessed One. I now feel the preciousness of time. I don't want to waste the remaining days on pain and expectation. I want to use this time to truly live, to truly practice. Excellent, the Buddha smiled. This is the wisdom of old age. When you no longer be pulled by external gains and losses, you can focus on internal growth. When you no longer live for others' approval, you can practice for your own awakening.
Just then, the eastern sky began to lighten. A new day was about to come. Purana suddenly knelt down, prostrating himself before the Buddha. Blessed One, I was foolish, chasing mirages for so many years. Now I finally understand that the true treasure has always been within my heart. I vow to take refuge in the triple gem and no longer be troubled by external gains and losses.
You must remember, children have their own fortunes. Do not be a horse or ox for your children. True compassion is allowing everyone to walk their own path independently. True wisdom is understanding that every life has its natural laws. The sky grew brighter. Birds in the garden began to chirp. Purana stood up, bowed deeply to the Buddha, and then quietly walked towards the garden gate. His silhouette in the morning light appeared particularly light, as if he had shed years of burden and found himself again. And the Buddha remained quietly seated under the Bodhi tree, his compassionate gaze fixed on this new dawn. He knew that Purana's awakening was just a beginning.
Countless other beings were still suffering from illusory attachments. But he also knew that as long as the conditions were ripe, everyone had the potential for awakening. This is the profoundness of the Dharma. This is the truth of life. Awakening isn't about age, but old age really is a golden time for it. That's when life's truths start to show themselves. The bell of death begins to toll, and all our illusions begin to crumble. In such moments, we're finally forced to face ourselves, to face the very essence of life. Real comfort isn't about a house full of children and grandchildren. It's about a complete heart. True happiness isn't about external companionship. It's about inner peace. When we grasp this, we're no longer that lonely old person needing comfort, but a wise elder who can offer wisdom.
We see things clearly when we're old, not because wisdom finally arrives late, but because courage finally arrives. In our youth, we didn't have the courage to face the truth. In middle age, we didn't have the time to ponder it. Only in old age, when everything is irreversible, do we get the courage and opportunity to confront it head-on. This might be life's greatest sorrow, and also life's greatest compassion. The sorrow is that we wasted so much time on illusory pursuits. The compassion is that life always gives us a chance, in our last moments, to find our true selves. Finally, I want to say this. Even the best sermon is just a finger pointing at the moon, not the moon itself. The Dharma is reality. Only through personal realization can you truly taste its flavor. Words can never fully express it.
At Sacred Lotus Glow, we believe that everyone has the ability to unlock their own inner light. Join us in lighting the fire of wisdom, spreading compassion, and living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Subscribe today so you don't miss any videos that help you find your inner peace and light.